Let me make sure my hair is okay. My eyebrows okay?
They look good.
All one of them?
You're not a unibrow.
I play.
It's not hard.
You're all right.
It's a very
All right, we're both now recording.
Good evening, everyone. It's about 7:02. I'd like to call the February 6th, 2018 Union County Planning Board to order. And our first duty we have tonight is to, because of some absences, is to ask someone to make a motion that Charles be put in voting status.
So moved.
And I'll second.
Thank you, appreciate that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Charles, you'll be voting with us tonight. Thank you very much. Okay. Item number 2 that we've got to talk about that is on the agenda is addition and deletions of the agenda. Is there anything there that we need to discuss? Do we have a motion to approve as presented or add or delete something? What's the wish of the board?
I'll move to approve.
Motion to approve. Do we have any other discussion on that?
I'll second.
Thank you very much for the second, Everett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. We have some minutes that are before you, the December 5th and January 9th. If you've not had a chance to look at that, once you receive the package, ask you to please take a look at that, and then we will ask for approval or recommended changes, deletions, etc. of December 5th, 2017 minutes first.
So moved to be approved December 5th, 2017 minutes.
Russell has made a motion to approve the December 5th minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much, Charles. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, ayes have it. Our next one then is the January 9th minutes. We have a motion to approve, delete, add to, etc. of those minutes.
I move they be approved as presented.
Okay, motion's been made by Everett to approve as presented. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Russell. We appreciate that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Okay, that takes us down to item number 5, the conditional rezoning petition number 17-11, requesting rezoning classification from R40 to B2 CZ containing .215 acres, being tax map number 06156-002, located at 1505 South Providence Road, being within the Sandy Ridge Township.
Lee will be here momentarily. He had a technical issue, so he'll be right here, and we'll get to that one in just a moment.
Okay.
He has an issue to go take care of. He should be back in just a moment.
While we're doing that, may I make a comment about the meeting dates upcoming?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, what I'd like to do, if everybody's agreeable with this, is ask Brian to put on next month's agenda the dates for the 2018 schedule. I think there's a conflict on April the 3rd and September 4th. We come prepared to set those dates. Is that okay with everybody? Do we need a motion?
I think actually, if I'm not mistaken, the April 3rd one is not necessarily conflict. I think that's
I mean,
for you
April
guys to
2nd.
consider.
April 2nd.
There's a conflict, I believe, in November, because that coincides with the election day, and you may want to change that one. And I think there may be another conflict. Gosh, I don't have it handy.
Well, it says on April 3rd, the meeting date, that the BOC's meeting is scheduled for 4/2, which is Easter Monday.
That's right, and yours is on the 3rd, so you're fine. And what we don't know is whether the Board of Commissioners will want to actually move their
next one's-
technically off that day,
Okay.
so we don't know if the commissioners will change that. I don't know that I'd worry about the April 3rd meeting until we find out whether the board wants to move.
Well, then, if we can discuss then the September 4th and the November 6th,
Very good.
okay? And if you need this sheet, let Brian know, and we can have Pam resend it out to everybody. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Lee, you ready?
Yes.
Sorry about that, guys.
Mr. Lee Jensen.
As you have already stated, this is conditional rezoning request 2017-011. It's been submitted by Fannie Correa, and the property in question is 1505 South Providence Road, parcel 06156-002. These are some pictures that staff has taken of the property. Kind of hard to see up there on the screen, but
Turn that light off so
I appreciate that. The one kind of at the top left is looking south from the property along Providence Road. This is a piece of property that you guys dealt with several months ago. It was an ice cream shop and a print shop, and you guys rezoned that property. The ice cream shop kind of went away, relocated to a different location, and the print shop stayed, and you guys rezoned that to B2. The one in the middle, top middle, is looking at this. So this is a structure that's on the property. Top right is looking north along Providence Road. The piece of property just to the north of this is one that you guys have seen twice. It's Truffle Plaza. So if you remember, James Allen Lee presented that case. So that property is directly to the north of this one. Again, these are just some other pictures. Again, bottom left is a view toward the south, but it gets this is going toward Newtown Road. As you go down this hill on the right, you have the little shopping center that has, I think there's a Bank of America branch there and a little coffee shop on the corner. The one in the middle is looking across the street. There's a church. So if you just kind of keep going down that concrete and gravel drive, there's a church back behind that grove of trees. The one on the bottom right is another shot looking north along Providence Road. This is the area. So again, it's just south of the entrance to Chatsworth subdivision, just north of the Newtown Road intersection. You do have some municipalities in the area. There's Weddington is the pink color right there, so it kind of wraps around the property to the north and to the west, and into the south, down kind of the southeast corner of the intersection of Newtown and Providence. The town of Marvin has jurisdiction there. There is an approved commercial development there that's going to have a grocery store and some age-restricted homes behind it. Most of this area is, some of it's developed, so this area is developed as commercial at the corner. Again, you have the shopping center here. There's some medical offices on this tract. This tract was rezoned probably about 2 years ago, and it is slated for an indoor storage facility, kind of design looks like an office building. And the properties on the southwest corner, there's an Auto Bell and a CVS and outside storage units. And then most everything else in the area is residential and just open, vacant property. See the zoning in the area, again, kind of follows that same development pattern. You've got commercial at the intersection of Newtown and Providence. You have some business, or I guess commercial a little bit north that may not be reflected here. I don't know why you're not seeing the mouse, but the ice cream shop doesn't appear to have the commercial zoning on it yet, but that was rezoned. But everything else around there is zoned residential. And then our land use plan, we call for that intersection, about a quarter of a mile from that intersection, to be a neighborhood center. This piece of property does lie under that neighborhood center. Again, just looking back on Truffle Plaza, it's not a site-specific land use plan, so just because a property falls under a dot doesn't mean it has to be commercial. As you can see, there's some pieces of property that are in the subdivision that fall under the dot, and those are houses, but so it's not site-specific. No real environmental features on the property to speak of that would require any extra regulation. You have some streams in the general area, but your site is kind of that black outline, so no real environmental features to speak of. And transportation, you have about 20,000 vehicle trips a day on the north, on Providence Road on the north side of Newtown, and 18,000 on the south side of Providence, and then there's a count of 7,200 along Newtown east of Providence Road. And then some of the improvements, 16 Providence Road is scheduled to be widened to multi-lane in 2023, and then there's some turn lane improvements that are part of the Marvin Gardens development. We did have some conversations with DOT about this property, and the applicant did as well, regarding whether or not they would require a median for right-in, right-out access. They did require that on another one that you'll probably be seeing next month in the same general area. Truffle Plaza, they didn't really get to review because there was no actual use or building or any kind of square footage associated with it. So it's kind of a new requirement that DOT had, so we were a little concerned that this one might be required to do that. But through our conversations with the DOT, we learned that the DOT was not going to require it for this site.
So there's no right in, right out?
No, it'll be a full access. And some of the issues with that, if a median was required on this site, let me back up a little bit. If a median was required on this site, then again, I remember I mentioned the church across the street. That church is already there, and they have full access to their site. So they're not prohibited from just making a right-in, right-out movement. If DOT would have required a turn lane or a median here, it would have not only restricted this side, but it would have restricted the church as well. So I think in staff's opinion, we were kind of okay with this scenario that they did not require that median. If this were a bigger development, it's a completely different story. In 2023, it's going to be a completely different story because there will be a median there to separate that traffic. But at the same time, they're also going to study that road to decide where some of these access points should be. This is kind of a patchwork approach, if you will. So as far as staff comments go, it appears to be in conformance with the Union County Comprehensive Plan. There is a limited amount of development that could take place on the site. Go back so you can see the pictures. One thing I didn't talk about during my presentation, it's in the staff report. The size of the property is 0.215 acres, so it's a very small piece. It's a non-conforming piece. The zoning currently is R40. Minimum lot size is 40,000 square feet, so this is well under the minimum lot size. It also doesn't appear that the current structure meets the required setbacks, front and rear. Structure was there before the county had zoning, so it's a grandfathered structure. It's a non-conforming situation. If the property was rezoned to B2, there's no minimum lot size requirement. So in that aspect, it's positive because that kind of brings it into conformance with a minimum lot size requirement. It probably still doesn't meet the setbacks. Setbacks in B2 are 25 off the front, 25 off the rear. So still have a setback issue, but we have a setback issue now. So staff didn't see that as much of a problem. As far as how much development could take place on the property, it's really limited. You're at 0.2 acres. The current structure doesn't meet setbacks, won't meet setbacks under a B2 designation. So the house is really what can be used as a structure. So say an office or some other use like that. And a minimal amount of parking could go on the site. If the house were torn down and some other development proposed, they would probably have to seek a variance before they could even build something. So they would be going to the Board of Adjustment first to try to get a variance. And again, I've kind of talked about a lot of that in my staff comments on this, but taking all that into consideration, when we looked at it, we decided to recommend to approve the rezoning. There's really not a whole lot else you can do with the property unless you leave it as commercial and have it as a house. But as far as the plan goes, the B2 zoning is compliant with the Union County Comp Plan. Anybody's got any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. And the applicants here, if you have any questions for her.
Questions from the board? Anybody?
You said 5 parking spots is all to be allowed?
Yes, sir.
Obviously, a small business.
That's really all that will fit on the site. Carol Rushing prepared a survey that showed those 5 parking places, and they were pretty tight. So if you try, and that works with the most of the proposed uses in B2. So staff was fine with that amount of parking. If you were to try to increase the size of that building or change, like a B4 district where you've got more intensive uses, you wouldn't have enough room to park cars. So B2, as far as the parking, the size of the building, the uses that are allowed, if you're going to rezone the property, that's the most appropriate zoning district to do.
Will there be any additional square footage put on this facility?
Any additional square footage, number one, would have to come back to you guys. And 2, would probably have to get a variance from the Board of Adjustment because you would be encroaching into the required setback. Again, the current house is non-conforming. It's grandfathered. It can stay there. But if you increase that at all, then you've got to seek a variance. And I think a variance would probably be tough to get on this property. Of course, I haven't looked at all the facts and weighed all those, but I think it might be kind of tough.
What is the current square footage of this home or facility or structure?
600, yeah, I knew it was pretty small. I was going to say 800, but it's 650 square feet.
What is the planned use of the property,
It would be any of the uses allowed under B2.
which include?
Office, small scale retail. Environmental Health has approved this for a small office. There is a septic system on the property. So Environmental Health has looked at it, they've said it could be a small office. So really small offices or, a small retail store is about it.
Lee, what about that subdivision that's back behind that? Did you have to send letters to anybody about this?
We did. There were letters
Comments
sent.
come back?
I got one telephone call from one of the gentlemen that lives behind it. I'm actually surprised they're not here because they told me that they were opposed to it. But we sent out our notices like we normally did, and I know Ms. Correa sent out her notices for the community meeting. She had her community meeting on site, and it was just the 2 of us sitting out there right before, I think it was before Christmas, waiting for people to show up, and nobody came. I mean, we sent out our required notices, and we got one phone call, and that was it.
How far away is it from the nearest residential? either subdivision or home.
Closest, I'm sorry, the closest residence would be behind it. Well, if you don't consider the Truffle Plaza piece, the Truffle Plaza, which came to you guys last month, is a residence now, or it's a house. I don't think anybody lives there, but there's a house there. It would be the closest. The next closest would be directly behind it on the cul-de-sac along Hawksbill Court. So probably 75 feet. So it's not far.
We're gonna get into the same thing, Lee, as we did with the other property of where the planning board says define the uses, narrow it down so it's not way out there. And, you know, we tried to work on that and we
You
couldn't
could-
get them to agree on anything.
And you could definitely talk to she's here tonight, you could definitely talk to the applicant about trying to narrow those uses. Those are certainly conditions that you guys could discuss and impose, as long as the applicant were to agree to those.
Obviously, the HOA didn't show up in mass tonight,
I
so they
agree.
must not be as concerned about it. And whether you have a small business or a renter who lives like a heathen in the place, which chances are you could get that, I'd much rather have a little small business than some renter that don't take care of a property, backing up to my $600,000 or $700,000 house. It's on Providence Road. That's why I didn't understand totally the other night what they got so upset about, but that's why I stayed out of it. So,
Well, I'm kind of with Russell in that it needs to be a small business and really plan for and recruit it. Not let it have 27 different things under B2.
Yeah, like I said, that's certainly something that I think you could discuss with the applicant. If you wanted to negotiate some uses that you wanted to exclude.
Limits itself.
Pardon?
The size of
The
this,
size does
size of
limit
this
itself.
property limits itself.
yeah, it does.
Rather than having to add a big string of extra onto it.
Are y'all ready to hear from the applicant?
Yeah, I mean, my whole concern is just our consistency as a planning board. You know, that if we're going to be looking at properties, especially properties that are neighboring this property, we're consistent in our decisions. And, you know, I certainly would like to hear from the applicant as to what her vision is as far as this property. You know, if that vision is limited, it's certainly outside the scope of the prior applicant, but, you know, that's just my concern, is that we make sure that we're consistent in our decisions.
And I will say that I agree that you have properties on either side that have been before you. One you recommended to approve, and one you recommended to deny. So and this is a lot like the one to the south, where there's an existing building, the ice cream store / print shop. This is a lot like that one. You have an existing building that's there that wanted to use, now they did limit it to one specific use. They said, we want to use this for a print shop. But there was a building there, it did not meet current setbacks, still doesn't meet setbacks. But it was rezoned to B2 for that use, specifically because the building was already there, and that was really the only use they had for it. So this is kind of similar in that situation.
Your
I think
zoning
that
last,
building- go ahead.
I'm sorry, sir. Your zoning last month was how much size was in that?
It was an acre and a half.
Yeah, so you could have done a lot more things with that property. A lot more cars, a lot more, obviously. Same people were notified for this property that was for last month, right?
Yes.
I think the other thing on the print shop that you're talking about, Lee, to me, what they tried to do, they tried to put 24 eggs in a 1 dozen carton by having U-Haul, a sign shop, a furniture shop.
That's right.
You know, you name it, and they tried to do it and didn't do it right to start with coming to you guys.
True. Yep.
Are y'all ready to hear from that?
Well, let's see, this, in order to stay consistent, Don, this one that we had previously, the acre and a half, they didn't actually request a B2, did they? They requested just a zone.
They were office.
They were just office.
Yes.
So it's different.
It is. This would be a little higher. That's why I said you could do retail on this site under B2. It'd be small retail because there's only a 600 square foot building. You could do, and I just got the ordinance here. You could do a animal grooming and training. So you could do a small grooming salon or a small veterinary office. So there's a handful of uses under here, but it's limited to a 600 square foot building. And it's also limited to whatever the health department would tell them they could do since it's on the septic system. Unless now there is the county sewer's closed. So, you know, if it got to be the point where there were no uses, county sewer could be extended to it relatively easily.
And also parking.
Right, and also parking would restrict. Thank you, Brian. What they could do, because again, if we got into that discussion on the Truffle Plaza, it's that calculus equation, the use, you look at the square footage of the building or the number of employees, and that kind of equals your parking. So here you're limited to a 600 square foot building and 5 parking spaces.
Unless they tied on to the county sewer, and then that opened up some parking spaces.
No.
It,
No? Okay. Good.
The site is still limited, you know, you still have to meet setback requirements.
Right.
I would guarantee that you would be able to, I think 5 is the max you could get based on all the setbacks.
Right.
Okay. Whichever type of sewer method.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments before the applicant steps forward? Thanks, Lee.
And those would be conditions too, you know, you can just make that clear, that that's a condition, no more than 5 parking spaces, and, you know, the building itself can't exceed more than 600 square feet, which is the existing building. You can stipulate that, so there's no misunderstandings down the future, that's an item that you would like to have the applicant agree to. So it's very clear that that's the only use and only intentions of it. The board has that option to discuss that with the applicant if they wish to.
You want to step up in front of the mic, please, and state your name and your address, please?
My hand?
No, your name.
Oh, my name, I'm sorry.
Name and your address.
Oh, yes, Fanny Correa, and I live in Gardens on Providence. And the address that I applying for the rezoning is 1505 Providence Road South. And I had a couple comments regarding that. You know, when I bought that property a while ago, that looked like Syria. I don't know if Lee remember, it was a horrible shack in there. And I live nearby, like probably walking distance in Gardens on Providence. And every time that I drive my kids to the school, that property in the next door, Angela, always bother me because it looks trashy, and we live in beautiful neighborhood. So when I buy the property, I said the first thing I'm gonna do is knock down all the stuff. And I knew I'm gonna keep the little house. And we renew everything inside. We put everything, you know, new ceramic floors, and it's beautiful inside, you know, all the electrical. And we work a little bit in the landscaping, and still working because the time now, you know, it was winter, so we can do the reseed and everything. But, you know, I don't want to look on that, you know, when I live there and my neighbors, and put a little, you know, horrible place, and consider now that it will be an office. Is we pass the rezoning, I want to look nice. You know, I don't want that. Still, I don't like the pictures that you show in there, but I want the place to be, you know, according to where we live, you know. And like next door, you know, we have the ice cream and the hall and lots of signs, you know, like we sell everything in here, you know, just need eggs and pigs. And you know, we don't want that. You know, the other four corners, when we had CVS, Bank of America, and we had two more corners open that is gonna be developed. And coming soon, you know, we want the neighborhood to look nice. You know, houses there are $1 million, even behind us. It's a little bit of distance in Chatsworth in my property, and it's no parking behind them, so it's gonna be pretty much a landscape in there. So it's gonna look nice, you know.
Let me ask you a question. You're
Yes.
asking for a B2.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to assume you've done the research to find out what uses are allowed under B2, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Out of those uses, what are you looking for? What type of business are you looking to go in there?
Yes. Right now, I actually have my office at home, and what I do is home health care. I send my stuff to the elderly people, and I'm looking to put a very rustic, conservative sign for my office, and it's just going to be me and my assistant right now. I want to sell the property eventually in the future, so that will belong to whatever they want to do in the future. But I really want to keep it very simple and no selling nothing right now.
So you're moving your home office into that building right now?
No, right now. I mean, is we passed it. Yes, that will be my purpose. Correct. Yes. And like we say, you know, with 5 parking spots, it is impossible to have. And then I don't want to have problems with you guys, and you know, getting letters from the town and all that. As my property is really small, and we can do much, you know. But as actually, my neighbor is very interested in purchase the property that eventually, you know, you're all. So I don't know what's going to happen right now. We just stay in the moment of what's going on, and my plan is just to rezone into. That's my goal right now.
Okay, now which neighbor are you talking about want?
1425. They were yesterday scheduled for yesterday, but they they rescheduled. Yeah.
What?
The Truffle Plaza.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to buy your property so
That's-
they could extend out.
Yes. There's just a, you know, yeah, we've been talking back and forth, but nothing formal yet. So, yeah.
Would you be satisfied with just a conditional zoning for an office with 5 parking spaces and 600 square feet, and that be it?
I mean, that is what we are. That's what we have here, correct? The
Yeah.
B. Yeah.
I mean, she's bound by her concept plan, yes.
Yes.
Except for the office use.
Yes.
So that would be,
But at the point in time, we're asking for a B2, correct?
Yes.
that's what I'm saying, if you said you're limited just to office, I think that's what you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Gray, I want you to understand what he's asking. What he's asking is that office uses would be the only thing that you could market it for. You couldn't go out and market it for someone to do a dog grooming.
Mhm.
That's not office, that wouldn't qualify.
Mhm.
You could market it to someone to do retail, small retail, that wouldn't qualify. What
Mhm.
he's asking you is, would you accept that all it would be an office use with 5 parking spaces? So I want to make sure you understand what.
Correct,
what he's
yeah.
asking.
Well, I would love to have the other possibility because, you know, my property, it will be in a different picture is I want to sell the property eventually. And my neighbors buy that too, you know. Even Angela was very interested, my neighbor on the left side. So, and just from that value point of view, but believe me, I'm not doing that, you know, and it's not what I do.
If I remember correctly, the Truffle property, the opposition was that they didn't want a dog grooming place in there, dogs out back. Pardon? I know they didn't want anything.
I don't think we want
Oh, people come with some ideas, you know, like last night somebody called me and it's a truck company and 600, and that piece of land. They come with ideas, it's people, you know.
I think the biggest heartburn is what you guys keyed on, is that there was nothing for them to really look at. There wasn't a building size that was identified, they didn't know what the building would look like. There was a number of uses that I think they had concern with. Now, I would say that they don't want anything there commercial. But I think had there been more detail, that certainly would have been a little bit, less of an issue for them. I can't promise you that they would say, yes, we support it, but I think that would have been a lot better if they could see, well, what's the building look like? You know, how big is the building? I think that information would have been very important.
Well, I think, Everett, I think you made a good point, because as we discussed the last time, we tried to throw out some ideas for uses, and it fell on deaf ears. And they wanted it, you know, high and wide, and I think this needs to be, if it is approved, that it needs to be narrow, in my opinion. And that way we maintain the consistency, Charles, that we're talking about, and it makes sense. Because if you've got 2-3 cars at the most there, it certainly will look better than what it has in the past. And I commend you for fixing it up, because I remember when the junk pile used to be out on the left-hand
Oh.
side. How well I remember that. And also, I think that if you were to really sit down and narrow this down to strictly an office, you'd be much, 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 much better off. You wouldn't have your hands full with the people behind you.
I know, yeah.
I'm being very honest.
You know the guy with the truck with the tacos that is by the Goodwill? He come to that. Would you rent it to me? And you're kidding me. I mean, we don't want that in the neighborhood, you know, even that Goodwill truck there. But anyway, so, well, that's okay. I'm okay with the office. Yeah, I'll be okay with that.
Any other comments?
The
Concerns?
one we had last month, the only concern I remember our having was setting a precedent on letting a conditional use go by without a specific application. But in my mind, the land was reasonable for a B2. The owner just didn't ask for a B2. And I think anything along this corridor is gonna change drastically in the next 4 or 5 years when they widen that road. So I don't see anything wrong with a B2 on the property, with or without a little narrower restriction. I think it's worthy of the difference.
Any other comments? Russell?
I hate to see us every time we rezone something that we restrict if it B2, we start restricting everything to what we want it to be, you know. I mean, there's nobody here from the neighborhoods or nobody that was here complaining. So once she applied for B2, I think we give her B2 and whatever's included in B2. I mean, we're not here to protect people that don't show up and have not one person's here tonight trying to remonstrate against her. You know, I just don't think every time that we should try to restrict people to what they're doing. If there's nobody here, I mean, if there is people here, then we try to find a happy hunting ground in the middle. But there's nobody here tonight opposing what she's trying to do. So that's my opinion. So.
Well, in my response to that, and please, somebody help me understand this if I'm looking this wrongly. Why would you come to the board wanting a CG B2? Why don't you just come saying, I want a B2? Why are we under conditional zoning if we're just gonna give B2?
And that's an excellent question. One of the good things about that is that, number one, you can specify that, you know, it is limited to only 5 parking spaces. We don't believe there could be more parking spaces if sewer were added, but
It could be.
something could change, and we might miss that, but you could say, listen, we want to limit it to 5 parking spaces. You can limit it to only a 600 square foot building, because understand, you don't control whether a variance is issued or not. So if the the applicant were to say, listen, I want to expand this, and go to the Board of Adjustment and ask for a variance, and the Board of Adjustment issues it, then she's got it. And there's nothing that this board can do to stop that unless there's a condition placed on it that this is the size that it can be, this is as large as it can be. So there, I think in this circumstance, that would apply very well. Uses, absolutely. If there are some uses that you feel that are inappropriate there, then I don't think that's one problem. I think what you've got here is, there's a difference between a developer and a property owner who really doesn't understand the process.
Mhm.
You got a property owner who really doesn't understand the process. She's hoping to be able to market the site. I think if you gave her some suggestions on what you're comfortable with, I don't know that she would have any issues with that. But again, I think that's what it boils down to. I agree with you. You know, if you're not gonna make any conditions, then why not just do a straight B2? We wouldn't recommend that. We think there's some conditions that you need to place on this.
And I will say too, that if for some reason it was determined that parking spaces could be added, or if the Board of Adjustment did issue a variance to make the building bigger, if you set conditions on this and say 5 spaces, 600 square feet, these uses, and there's the potential, there's the opportunity to change that, she's not, nobody's saying she can't. I
She
mean,
has to come back.
She has to come back to the board, and
Mhm.
she has to present a new application. You guys would have an opportunity to review that.
Right.
So I don't want you to think of it as saying, well, it's always locked at this forever. It is if it's never changed, but there's an opportunity to come back.
Are we sure it's 600 square feet?
650, yes.
650.
And we want to make sure it's exactly what's there, because we say it's smaller, then
Yeah, we could double check, pull it up on the,
Tax record.
tax records real quick.
All right, I'm gonna be the devil's advocate here, as always. What if we would give this, CZ B2, which means we're giving them a carte blanche B2? These people that had, please say that word, Truffle Square Plaza. They purchase this property, they come back to us and say, look, you own this B2, we want this B2 over here. I mean,
That is certainly possible.
they're owners and they're gonna have contiguous land to it. Why shouldn't they also have B2 with no conditional zone?
Currently, their request is for conditional zoning office. They'd have to go back through the process, to actually make that change. So that, what's before the commissioners is conditional zoning office. If they wanna change that to B2, they have to go all the way back through a community meeting process. Lee, you think I'm correct on saying that?
You talking, yes, if they wanted to change that, Brian's right, they've got an application in for office condition.
So they'd have to start from scratch and go all the way back through community meeting, come back to this board, then go back to the commissioners. Could they do it? Certainly. Would they? I don't know why they would at this point in time, to be honest with you. But yes, certainly that is something they could decide to do. I just don't see that being a route they would take. Now, again, we certainly would support if the board had a handful of uses that you wanted to say, these are the uses we support: office, light retail, animal grooming, whatever it may be, and say these are the uses that we would only support on that. And I think that's more than appropriate in this circumstance.
Again, I'll be devil's advocate on this one. I personally think the light retail, what I'm thinking about, Mr. Carrera, are you familiar on into Waxhaw on the right-hand side, the business called Southern Style?
Yes, I do. I bring that to them.
It's a very, very successful light retail,
Very.
very successful.
I love it. Beautiful
I
store.
think something like that, or the office is what you ought to look at.
Correct.
I understand where Russell's coming from,
Mhm.
but I think in order for this thing to be successful, that it would be one of those two things for me.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
So somebody else chime in, please.
just looking at the property card, it's 640, or I'm sorry, the total living space is 640 square feet. So that's what it's listed as.
It has the porch and, we would like to close. That's, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
the porch is 72 square feet. This is an FYI.
Count that against you, that's not.
But without getting into splitting hairs, you could always just make the condition that it be limited to the building that's on the site currently.
That's right.
And just leave it at that.
No expansion.
Right, no
Building
expansion.
as is.
What are the feelings of the board?
At this point, I'd make a motion to approve the petition with the conditions that the property, or that the building be limited to its current size of 640 square feet, or whatever the current size is deemed to be, along with the restriction that no more than 5 parking spaces.
So you're making that motion?
I'm making that motion.
A motion is on the table that's been made by Chris. Do we have any further discussion on that? Okay. All those in favor? Pardon?
We need
I need a second.
Second.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Charles. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay.
All those opposed?
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Okay. Okay, carrying on, we go to item number 6, consideration of the Hemby Bridge Small Area Plan.
All right. This has been a while in the making, so I'm glad we're finally here presenting this to you tonight. So I'll try to be quick about it. We've done a lot of background on this and it's gone through a lot of vetting, but we started talking about small area plans shortly after the Board of Commissioners adopted our new Union County Comp Plan back in 2014. That was one of the goals of the planning department, was to do a series of small area plans, and we decided as staff that we thought a good place to start would be near the interchanges around the Monroe Expressway. So we started looking at those interchanges and came to the conclusion in our little staff that we thought the best place to start was the first interchange as you're heading east, which would be after you leave, after the main interchange in Stallings, where the Monroe Expressway leaves existing 74. The first interchange is at Indian Trail Fairview Road. So we looked at that and said, we think that's a good location to start with. So the drivers behind that were, number one, the plan. Our plan said we should do some small area planning, and 2 was the construction of the bypass. We thought that when the bypass opens, this being the first interchange, there could be some fairly significant development pressure at this location, and we wanted to be out in front of it to plan the growth as opposed to reacting to it and bringing you guys a bunch of conditional rezonings that are kind of piecemeal that don't make any sense. So we wanted to have a plan in place before the bypass was finished. So we decided that that's kind of the direction we wanted to take. We talked to the commissioners about it. They agreed that they thought that was a good idea. And we approached the town board at Hemby Bridge and asked them, because a good bit of this property is in their jurisdiction. Well, it's in their corporate limits. We actually handle all the planning and zoning for the town, but we wanted them involved because it is their town. So we approached them and we shared with them what we wanted to do. And at that point, we started scoping out where we thought our study area should be. And we quickly realized that the town's desires weren't really to limit it just to this small area here around the intersection, but to really include the whole town, because they don't really have a plan for the town, except for kind of our long-range comp plan, which shows some dots on a map and shows some mixed residential in some areas. So they said, well, you know, we think it'd be a good idea to really expand this out and cover the whole town. So we, Brian and myself and Dick, and back when Joe was here, sat in the office, sat in our conference room one day, and just had some bunch of pens and paper, and we started sketching out a boundary that kind of made some sense. So just using the town limits didn't really make a lot of sense because they're kind of all over the place. So we came up with this study area boundary, which for the most part follows roads or the town limits in some places it follows creeks. So it's got a pretty defined boundary. We took this back to the town, and they agreed that they liked this study area because it did include the whole town. And it also includes some areas outside. You have some areas over here around the interchange that we tried to avoid Indian Trail as much as possible, just because they've already got a plan that's fairly detailed for this area. So we didn't want to really overlap, but just to make a sensible boundary, we did include some parts of Indian Trail. Didn't really change any of their recommendations, but it does include some of that. So this is our final map of the study area. So once we got this done, we started our process of reaching out, trying to get input from the community. So we started scheduling community meetings, and we had them over at the old Hemby Bridge Fire Department, if you know where that is. There's a Union Power substation next to it now, and it's now it's a Hemby Bridge Community Center. So we had all our community meetings there. It's kind of the central hub of Hemby Bridge. The town does a lot of events there. I think there's a church that meets there on Sunday, so we thought that was a great location. And for a study area, this study area contains around 1,150 people. For a study area that small, if you will, we had really good turnout for these community meetings. So we had a total of 3. And I think we averaged around 50 people at each meeting. I think one meeting we had around 70. I think the lowest we may have had around 45. But we hovered around 50 people, which is really good. We really weren't expecting that much participation, and participation there was. We got a lot of feedback, a lot of comments, a lot of good feedback. The two biggest concerns were traffic, and we had the unfortunate event that one of our community meetings coincided with the overturned truck on the westbound lane of Highway 74, which was diverting all the traffic onto a secret shortcut in Idlewild Road, and we almost didn't even make it on time because it was so backed up. So that really even added to the traffic issue. But traffic was probably the primary issue that people brought up, and kind of going along with that, increased residential development. Hemby Bridge was really incorporated. It was incorporated in, I think it was November 3rd, 1998, and they were incorporated as a defense, really. Indian Trail was growing toward them, and they didn't want a lot of dense development. So they said, you know what, we're going to incorporate. We don't want to be part of Indian Trail. We don't want to be an Indian Trail. So they created their own town. The county's been doing their planning and zoning ever since they incorporated, but the desire there is to really have preserve that rural heritage. And the kind of the northern area here, once you get out Indian Trail Fairview Road, past I think Bent Creek, and I don't recall the name of the subdivision across the street from Bent Creek, but that's this area. Once you get out in these locations, and even going out Idlewild Road on that south side, it's fairly rural. There's a lot of farms. There's a lot of farms out there. So they wanted to preserve that rural character. We did hear that the town was okay with some commercial development around the core, which they kind of consider the intersection where Secret Shortcut changes to Idle Wild Road and Indian Trail Fairview Road. They consider that their kind of town center. Town Hall's on one corner, Bridge Restaurant, which if you ever are looking for a place to eat, Indian Trail is really good. That's on another corner, and there's a kind of a fence company on the other corner. And then kind of that northwest corner is all floodplain. It's mostly DOT right of way. The town actually sort of uses it as a makeshift park. They've got their town sign there, their Christmas decorations. So it's kind of like the town park. And in between, and they were also okay with some limited commercial development near the interchange. And in between those two areas, they said, you know what? It would probably make sense to maybe look at some medium density residential. They didn't really want high density, but in between those two areas, some medium density kind of made sense to them. While that was going on, we also asked Kimley Horn to do a market analysis for us, mainly because we wanted to understand what the development potential of some of these areas were. We did hit kind of a hiccup in that the expressway is a toll facility. There's not a lot of data, or at the time the market study was done, there wasn't a lot of data that really talked about how tolling would impact the development potential of property. So, it kind of led us to some conclusions. This area is ripe for residential development. A lot of people see this as, once these improvements are done, they're working on improvements in Mecklenburg County, you'll be able to get to uptown Charlotte in really no time when a lot of those improvements are in place. So really, a lot of residential development is what the market kind of wants. There is some potential, as we thought, for some commercial development around that interchange, but mainly interstate type commercial development. So we kind of backed off from that a little bit. That market analysis did help us kind of inform our plan, but really what drove it were most of the citizen comments. So our two main focus areas were that interchange, but really we started concentrating on that town center. So, and I will point out that that was the only outside help that the county had. This was completely done. The rest of this was completely done in-house by your planning staff here. So we didn't use any consultants. So that brings me to some of the recommendations that we came up with. Those are primarily land use type recommendations. Those green areas you see, those are agricultural areas. Those are recommended to stay agriculture. That's what we heard from the neighborhood. That's what we heard from the community. That's what we heard from the folks that live there. So they didn't want increased development. They wanted it to remain agriculture. I think if a lot of them had their way, they may not even want RA40 out there. They may want something with a larger lot size. So because they even saw RA40 as a dense neighborhood. The yellow that you see on here, that's a low density residential pattern. That's near existing neighborhoods that are there that are kind of acting as low density. So we looked at those and we expanded on some of those a little bit. The brown that you see, those are rural centers. That's some small scale retail development. The area here is really an existing commercial center. There's a BP gas station. I think there's a barbershop, an auction house. I think there is a barbershop too. So some small scale commercial there. This corner, this is Indian Trail Mill Grove and Lawyers. That corner is already zoned commercial. So those four corners are zoned commercial. The plan that we have doesn't reflect that as a commercial node. So we've had a little bit of out of sequence there, but it kind of makes sense. There used to be, there's a store on that sort of southeast corner, little gas station. They rent U-Haul vans. It's been there forever. There used to be a store on this corner. The building's gone. It fell in several years ago, and the owner of the property hauled it away. But there used to be a store there, so we saw this as a good rural center. And then the other areas were kind of there's no interchange here, but you do have some commercial activity that takes place. This is the intersection of Faith Church Road and Secret Shortcut. There's no commercial there, but we saw that as, and the town saw that as, you know, maybe there's some commercial that could happen there. And then after you go under the bridge heading toward the town center, there's a little farm stand and there's some scattered commercial activity right in that location. So we said it makes sense to kind of keep that as a rural center, maybe let it expand just a little bit. The areas that I talked about in Indian Trail, they were already planned, and this is in the area of Old Hickory Business Park. So this was already planned by Indian Trail to be industrial and an employment center. So we kept that the same as Indian Trail had projected, and then have another industrial and employment center that the town wanted down next, adjacent to the to the bypass. Have a few institutional pieces. Those are mainly town hall, a few churches, community center. Our medium density residential area, well, actually let me talk about the town center first. So we define the town center as the existing town center where you have the intersection of where Idlewild and Idlewild turns into Secret Shortcut and Indian Trail Fairview. And we expanded out a little bit. The town kind of thought that might be something they would want to see. Maybe if any growth was to occur as far as commercial development goes, they would like it to occur there. And it's a mixed use at the interchange. And the in-between is where town kind of thought that possibly some medium density residential might be appropriate. So again, this kind of was produced over three community meetings, got a ton of input, and you're working with the town council. Some of the recommendations that were kind of beside this that we have are, you know, most of the implementation on this will be done through conditional rezoning. So any of this development, you know, mixed use development in town, all of this right now is zoned residential. So any kind of commercial use or residential uses would probably need to come back to you guys. I think it's a mix of RA40 and R20. I don't think many people are going to want to use that property in those use categories. So I think most of those would come back to you guys with a conditional rezoning. In the town center, we believe that if this plan is endorsed by the planning board and approved by the board of commissioners, our biggest work item that planning staff will want to do is create either a town center zoning district or a town center overlay, because these the commercial properties that are there now are currently zoned B4, which require a 40-foot front setback and some 20-foot side setbacks, and it's really not, at B4 is really not designed for a town center. So what the town wanted to see, what kind of staff thought was, and what's existing out there is buildings that are pushed up closer to the street, maybe have sidewalks, maybe do some beautification projects along those roads just to make it look more like a downtown. 'Cause Henry Bridge, that's what Henry Bridge considers their downtown. So through the rezoning process and creating some new districts and developers coming in and doing projects, we think we can maybe get them to the point where there is a downtown. And I think that's, and then we've got some parks that are shown, which is really kind of what the town considers its park right there across the street from the bridge. It's really DOT right of way, but they use it as a park. So some of the other things from implementation standpoint is there is sewer that goes along Crooked Creek. It goes up to Hemby Bridge Elementary School and it stops. So this area is agricultural, so we would work with Public Works and probably not extend water and sewer to serve those areas. But these areas where we're talking about town center, medium density residential, and mixed use, those would definitely be areas where we would look to either have current sewer, if there's current sewer service there, to make sure that, you know, the capacity is there to serve it, or if there's not capacity, to extend capacity to it. And the other thing that we have talked about is Idlewild Secret Shortcut is on the long-range plan. Bjorn, I don't think there's a time frame associated with that to be widened, but yeah, it's on the, I think it's on the plan at some point to be widened, but there's no money for it, there's no time frame. So when that time does come, you know, we'll have this plan in place, and we will work with DOT to ensure that that widening doesn't negatively impact the town. We also had, and I forgot to mention this, we were talking about the traffic issues. We had DOT look at the issue there at Indian Trail, Fairview, Sechrist, and in Idlewild and Mill Grove. That's where the backup tends to occur. There's traffic signals at both of those intersections, and they are sequenced pretty close. They're pretty good, but you have so much volume coming through there that it gets backed up going into, you know, going toward Mecklenburg County in the morning. It gets backed up sometimes all the way, well, it doesn't get backed up to Bonne Terre Village anymore because that entrance is gone, but when it was still there, it would get backed up to Bonne Terre Village. Coming home in the afternoon, it would get backed up to Chrismark, or to the entrance to Chrismark. So it gets backed up a pretty good way. So they did run a scenario looking at some traffic circles at those two intersections, and they really had a hard time making it work because they were so close together, and you had some stacking issues that ended up blocking the roundabout when they ran those scenarios. So we decided, you know, look, the plan, we're just gonna leave it like it is, and whenever the widening happens, when it happens, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, we'll address it then. So kind of where we are now. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we also included in this is actually already adopted, but we wanted to include it in the plan. When the county went through the Carolina Thread Trail process, the trails kind of truncated at the town of Henby Bridge limits. The town of Henby Bridge didn't participate in the Thread Trail process, so when the Thread Trail was adopted, they of course didn't extend the trails into Henby Bridge. So when the county Park and Rec did their plan back in, I think that was adopted in 2016, they have a countywide comprehensive Park and Rec plan. They did go ahead and extend these trails through Henby Bridge up to the elementary school. We took it a little bit further and thought, this site right here is owned by Union County Public Schools. There's nothing there, but it was slated to be high school, middle school E, I think. It's combined middle and high school. Now, whether or not that school's ever going to be built, I don't know. Schools own it. If it's ever a school or a park or some kind of community facility, it would be a great idea to connect it with a trail. And we also have, there's another leg that extends this way on the plan that would eventually connect in to a greenway that runs along Crooked Creek. This is Bonne Terre Village over here in Annandale. So there's some planned trails in Indian Trails jurisdiction through here, and we would propose just a connection coming up through there. So these are already in a planning document, but we thought it was appropriate to go ahead and include it in these. So if we have a developer that's looking at developing a property here and they don't think to look at the Park and Rec plan, but they look at the small area plan, they see it, they know, hey, there's going to be a trail, maybe, you know, we should work with staff to, you know, go ahead and dedicate trail easements or whatever staff needs. So that's the process. How we're going to go forward. We have, again, we had those 3 community meetings. The citizens were heavily involved in this, and they really drove those land use categories that you saw on that plan. We did take it to town council. They're not technically, I guess we don't technically have to take it to town council, but we thought since it's in the town, we should get their support. So we went to several town council meetings and went through several iterations there. So we had citizens look at it and give their opinion, and then we had it through a couple iterations at town council. And Dick, do you remember when that was? What, 2 months ago? We finally, they adopted it unanimously. And they said, we like this plan, and we think this is something that will be good for Henry Bridge. So the town of Henry Bridge has recommended approval of this plan to both the planning board and the board of commissioners. And before we take it to the board of commissioners, we wanted to bring this to you guys tonight. So we're asking for your recommendation for the commissioners to formally adopt this small area plan. If anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
I want to take just a minute just to thank Lee. Lee was the lead on this project, and he did a fine job with that. And he was right. We really, we did not involve a lot of outside help. We tried to do this inside. Because again, that's part of our role. So I'd really like to commend Lee and all the folks that worked on this. They really did work hard on giving support and input on this. Just want to respect that.
Thank you, Lee.
Well,
Appreciate it. Anybody have any questions for Lee? So you want us to,
make a formal recommendation for the Board of County Commissioners to adopt this plan.
Hopefully in support.
Yes, hopefully in support.
And we understand if you don't. If you don't
Go back to the drawing board, do it again.
don't have to, we're just asking for your support.
Lee has asked for a favorable recommendation to accept this report. Anyone here care to make that motion?
I so move to make that recommendation.
Thank you, Russell. Do
I
we have a
live
second?
right there and I'm all for what they're doing.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Chris, thank you. We have a second. Let's take a vote on that. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. Thank you, sir.
I will say in a few months, Bjorn's going to come to you with an even better one further down the road. So,
All right, okay. Now we have number 7. I made a call, want to be transparent in this. I made a call to Brian a couple of weeks ago, and I said, we've been talking about a lot of things going on, and maybe we need to get a current transportation update. And he made arrangements for Bjorn to call me, and I told him we just wanted a quick overview, nothing deep down or anything like that, to where things are going. So, Charlie, we appreciate you taking your time to do this.
I appreciate it. My wife hates to hear me talk about transportation. We've been married for a long time, and so I get to talk about it with a group that has actually asked me to, because normally she doesn't ask me to opine on things. What I have done, instead of trying to create lots of individual maps, there we go, create individual maps and lists that often are obsolete within days of their being produced, I have shown you where I go get my information, which is now, with the advent of online mapping and interactive mapping, a lot more user-friendly and available to the public to be able to navigate and comprehend. For transportation planning purposes in Union County, as you likely know, the majority of the county and all of the growing county is found within the Metropolitan Transportation Planning Organization, the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization, CARTPO, which is responsible for a whole range of federally mandated processes, one of which is the MTP, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. It's a federally required plan for what the region sees as its objectives and goals for the region, how much money they think they have available through the various state, local, private funding sources that are available, prioritize a list of projects and then program them out over those 25 years. For our purposes, it becomes the universe of projects that the MPO and the DOT really want to try and get funded through the STIP, which is a subsequent document that we'll talk about. And this plan is updated every 4 years. takes about 2 years to develop, so we're currently in the public comment period phase for the plan that goes out to 2045. That'll get adopted sometime in 2018 in a few months, and then in 2020, early 2020, the process will start over. And I have a link to the website that has all the documents. I'll get to that in a little bit after I go through the other slides. But all of the supporting documents and the maps are available for comment. The public comment period closes in about 2 weeks. So if you have any comments on the list or the methodology, I encourage you to submit them. I have reviewed a lot of the documents on the website, and I really don't have any comments about them. I think they're all pretty reasonable. They're very attractive documents and are useful for public consumption. They're made to be a lot more user-friendly than they used to be. Then what projects get funded within or are identified for funding within the 25-year plan, then get extra prioritization for consideration in the 10-year STIP, which is a statewide transportation improvement program. This is a document of the NCDOT. This lists all the capital, interstate maintenance, and bridge projects within the NCDOT across the entire state. When you see this list and you look at it, there's a 10-year list. You really need to think about it in terms of 2 5-year lists of projects. The first 5 years are committed. They're fewer projects, but it's like 90+% delivery rate in terms of those projects that are in there within the 5 years. You can expect them to be actively underway during that 5-year period. The second year list I refer to as the batter's box. They're up to bat, they're up to bat soon, but they're still waiting for other projects to get out of the way. Either they still need to go through the environmental review process to get the design taken care of, or the money needs to be there. It's not a matter of a lack of need, it's just a matter of the DOT can only build what it has the money to build. So those projects, you may see them bounce around a little bit, but generally speaking, they have a lot of momentum and they'll eventually make it into the first 5-year list. We're overwhelmingly represented by CARTPO, but the rural portions in the southern and northeastern part of the county are represented through the Rocky River Rural Planning Organization. DOT has a website that I'm not going to spell out the link for it because it's Byzantine. And the best thing to do is just to Google these things. If you want to find the website for the STIP, just Google NCDOT STIP online map or something like that. It'll come up and you'll be able to get to this link. I'll show you this one as well. Now when it comes to maintenance, the DOT has also become a lot more disciplined in terms of when road resurfacings are happening. I suffered through NC 75 widening this afternoon going to get my daughter from elementary school because it's currently in the midst of a resurfacing, a heavy duty one. And I would know that if I had gone and looked at this map and known that, oh, it's going for a full depth repair as opposed to just a patch and seal type of project. And that list used to be very unknown, and projects would come on or they'd drop off, and there was a lot of politicking. There's been a big push to make it a multi-year list of projects, and a couple years ago it was 3 years. Now it's going up to a 5-year list of projects. Obviously, year lists and projects in years 1 or 2 are a lot more confident than ones in years 4 and 5 because roads start to fall apart very quickly. Maybe something happened. There was a flood or some sort of natural event that really degraded the road and something else needs to get moved up. So it's not 100% confidence, but it is their objective to make this their working list of projects to implement. And this also has an online map, and I will get to that after we complete the slideshow. Then intersection scale projects, which I think has become very visible and commented on in Union County in the last few years, are all these intersection projects, particularly these roundabouts. Where are they coming from? We're getting surprised by them. We had one on Providence Road South that didn't necessarily interfere, but it affected a rezoning recently at a parcel there. And these projects are outside of the traditional STIP process. The MPO doesn't even necessarily know about them. Staff doesn't necessarily know about them. Now that Union County has committed to a local funding program to assist in implementing these projects or getting funding for them, I think we get consulted a lot more in the identification of these projects, potentially asked to submit or contribute money to them as they get submitted to the NCDOT for funding. And these are primarily safety projects. These are, the DOT has a SPOT safety program. SPOT is not an acronym, it's just SPOT, a specific location. And these projects are very specific in what they intend to accomplish. They are meant to rectify a known deficiency that's causing a crash history in the area. There has to be a crash history, has to have a specific treatment to address that type of history. Like if there's a lot of cars that are running off the road to the right, they'll install rumble strips. If it's to a lot of cars crossing over into the other side of traffic, maybe it's putting rumble strips down the middle. If it's a lot of rear ends, maybe it's a requirement for turn lanes. If it's a lot of T-bonings at an intersection, it might be signalization, it might be installing a roundabout, it might be installing a four-way stop. So there's a lot of different treatments, but they have to be very specific to what the issue is that's identified by the crash history. These projects typically have an upper limit of about $1 million, and roundabouts are going about $1.1 million. So Union County's been asked several times to contribute $100,000 because that gets them down to their $1 million threshold. You'll see that happen suspiciously quite a bit in terms of the budget. It'll be a $1.1 million request or budget and 100,000 local commitment, which gets them down to that $1 million threshold, makes it an eligible project within their program. And I don't have a map of these projects. We've asked the DOT to develop such a database because realtors need to disclose known projects. If they can't find them, they can't disclose them. People get mad when they find out a project's actually at an intersection. They just bought some good commercial property. So the DOT is committing to get some sort of a web-based browser for these projects as well in the next year. I put a map, or not put a map, I put its bulleted out lists of projects over the next few years that are funded. Tried to organize them by corridor. Like Newtown Road has 5 separate roundabouts that are funded in the space of just a handful of miles. You have Lawyers Road, several projects in a short period as well. NC 200, longer corridor, but multiple projects, and then just some other random projects, Tilly Morris, Weddington Matthews, Potter and Wesleyan Chapel, Chestnut Lane, and Weddington Matthews. All these are roundabout projects, and that's going to be pretty common. The DOT wants to get away from having to put signals everywhere because you have to maintain the signals. You put in the roundabout, pretty much leave it alone for a decade until you need to resurface it. So the last slide and online map that I have is now road ownership. People often ask, realtors call, residents will call, who owns our road? And there have been instances where roads were intended to be DOT owned and they never did get turned over. An easy way to go definitively figure it out is to look at a map. And the DOT has posted this information as well as an online map that you can zoom in and see who owns those subdivision roads or those roads that are through a neighborhood, or not even through a neighborhood, just through roads, to see whether a town has taken them over, because there are multiple instances of the municipalities taking over roads or segments of roads, and you can figure out where the municipal limits end and where the DOT maintenance picks up, or private maintenance in some instances. This is another online map. Just Google NCDOT road ownership, and it will pop up with these maps. And so before I go to the individual websites to show you how they work and what you can find out, are there any questions? Okay. So in terms of the CARTPO documents, this is the map of all of the projects that the MPO has determined can be funded within Union County over the next 25 years, or really about 27 years, because it's through 2045. Over here in the legend, you'll see the green ones are 2025, which are...
It's not coming in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Why isn't it coming up?
You might escape out of your,
Let's close this.
I missed the bus.
All right, so here we go. Green projects are essentially all the funded ones, are the ones we know about. They're happening fairly soon. That's Providence Road, that's the Ray Road extension, Monroe Road, short section of 74, some intersection projects along 74, as well as Monroe Expressway, and then I believe this is Idlewild Road. I think that's right. And so these are all projects that are funded through the STIP. They'll be occurring in the next 7 or 8 years. You then have the projects in 2035, which are shown in kind of the sky blue. You have a short section of 601 from 74 up to what is the Monroe Northern Bypass. And that's about it. That's it for a whole decade worth of delivery of projects. That's what we got. And then beyond that, the navy blue is 2045. So that would be 2036 through 2045, the next 10-year period. You have a further widening of 84 to the east to, I believe, Gold Mine. You have the Monroe Northern Bypass. You have a short section of, I believe, Morgan Mill. And then, I believe, 218 going out to roughly the county line. And that's about it for the next 10 years. So what you see in Union County is not a lot of construction for 20 years. And that's primarily a product of the MPO's project prioritization process, which encourages projects with high amount of freight traffic, or high amount of truck traffic, so freight, as well as multimodal considerations. We have 74, that's pretty much the only corridor we have with appreciable amount of truck traffic on it. That's getting a lot of improvement over the next handful of years, as well as the bypass, the expressway, which will alleviate congestion on that as well. And then multimodal, we don't do a lot of multimodal in Union County as it relates to either managed lanes or a lot of livability measures in downtowns that they like to see. And then just absolute congestion. If you look at a map of traffic volumes, our roads by and large pale once you get into Mecklenburg County. They become a lot larger in terms of volume. So bang for the buck projects are going into Mecklenburg County. But we are getting quite a bit over the next 10 years, and that's going to alleviate a lot of congestion. So are there any questions about this map or the CARTCO process before I move on to the STIP?
I would say that they said the other night that 63% of all the money has to go into Mecklenburg County. That's not even an option. So the money that's designated for the 3 counties, 63% has to go into Mecklenburg County.
I don't remember hearing that, but I would expect it to be even higher than that because they have the lion's share of the interstates where a lot of money is required to go and will go because of that tier of project.
There's 144.5 million that has to be spent on I-77 between the state line and Statesville by 2020. It has to be spent. It's already earmarked and has to be spent. So, there's a lot of, I've got the breakdown of all the projects here. It's crazy.
You mean from the STIP?
Well, from the roadway projects horizon years as they go forward.
Yeah, so if it's in the first few years, then it'd be in those are funded in the STIP.
But they have to, by 2020, they said the other night, 144.5 million has to be spent just on that one road.
Well, you've had, I-77's had probably 400 million spent in the last 2 years just due to the toll lane, the toll lanes project, managed lanes, whatever you want to call it, hot lanes on 77 North. That's been a very expensive project. So moving on to the STIP, which is the drill down of the first 10 years worth of planning. This goes across the entire state. You want to see what's happening elsewhere in the state? You can look anywhere and see all kinds of projects. You want to see ferry projects out on the coast? You can do that. You want to see transit projects, rail projects. There's quite a few projects and categories across the state. Then you zoom into our area, and you can click on any one of these, and then information will pop up. NC 84 gives the description, the spot ID number, the STIP number should be in here. No, it's not in here. It tells you the right-of-way and construction, how much the cost of the project is. So that's very handy. We look at like the airport one, see that we have quite a few projects that are funded at the airport. There's also this one, I believe this one's no, that's probably the rail trail. Yep. And multi-purpose path that Indian Trails building. There should be a siding project shown. Up there it is. This project right here is to create a 2-mile long siding in the Indian Trail area for the CSX Railroad. So we do have projects like that that are considered as well. And then you have smaller projects. This is probably a bridge project. Yep, bridge replacement. So it shows you where bridge replacement projects are as well. And this document will be updated in the next 12 months as we move into the next step. So this covers all the projects across the state that are found within the STIP. It's a lot easier than looking through a couple 100-page document. Much more user friendly. And if you wanted to share this map, you could share it. Click that link. You could post it right to your Facebook page, and tweet it, however you wanted to do it. That makes it very useful. Is there any questions about the STIP? Okay. Maintenance. This is a list of all the maintenance projects that are going on. If I were smarter than I am, I would know to look at, before I drove out to pick up my daughter near Waxhaw, I would have known today, oh yeah, there's a resurfacing project going on that is going to rehabilitate this road at a cost of $865,000. Maybe it was this one. Yeah, 18. So it was this one. With a lot of rehabilitation going on, 4 inches of asphalt, so pretty robust project, $1.3 million. But all of NC 75 ultimately over the next 3 years will be widened, or not widened, but rehabilitated. So you can see all these different projects that are going in, and it breaks them down: preservation, resurface, and rehabilitation, unless you know you're talking about a minor or a major type of maintenance project. Any questions about this? Okay. And then lastly, who owns the roads? This map is a good one. It doesn't get busy as you zoom out. It turns off the minor layer, so you're just looking at the major roads as you get to a larger scale. Zoom in, start looking at neighborhoods, and you can tell that, oh, some of these roads are private, whereas some of them are public.
Let's look at Providence
Let's go see if that's posted yet. Yeah, that's one of those things. This map will update, and it'll show those roads dropped off as the DOT administers it. But you can click on this road. Maybe it'll tell you information. I'm not sure. No, I guess it doesn't. It just tells you that it exists as a state maintained road, and you can look in that and figure that out, and that's pretty handy. So this is the lion's share of where I get my intelligence in terms of what's going on in the world as it relates to transportation. I share it freely, and I'll try and answer any questions you may have. It's on the Board of Transportation agenda for this month. I know that.
Still hasn't been taken off.
No, because like I said, it's still on the agenda this month. Because they screwed up and gave it to Marvin.
Any questions from you all?
I still can't believe he said that some DOT projects were politically motivated.
You can't imagine that?
I'd like to have some supporting evidence.
You'd have to go to some dinner somewhere to get it.
Thank you, Bjorn. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I do want to take a minute, we're giving out some kudos. Bjorn kind of alluded to this, but since we've got him on board, we started it with Joe, and Joe was here with the critical intersection analysis, and Bjorn came on board. We've been very successful in getting projects funded, the small projects, the intersection improvements, roundabouts, those kinds of things in the county that we really weren't getting a lot of looks at before. And part of that's because the commissioners agreed to give some money towards transportation improvements. So we're using that as leverage, where we tell the DOT that we'll put some money towards projects. That's helped. Also, just being a voice and saying, these are things that we need and working on it. So we've been very fortunate that we've been very successful in getting some of these small projects. And as you saw, in the later years and decades, we're not going to get very much when it comes to these major projects. So I think we really need to double down and focus our efforts on these maintenance projects and these intersection improvement projects. Really put our money in that, in those avenues, because I just don't
appreciate you bringing this up to us tonight. No, so, anyway. All right, let's go on to number 8, status report, the secret shortcut, small area plan.
Well, since Robert's not here. Are you already jumping?
Seacrest Shortcut Small Area Plan has a community meeting scheduled for, I believe, next Thursday, no, 2 Thursdays from now. So 16 days from now, we'll be holding a community meeting at the Carriage House, where we're finalizing the information in the next few days in order to get it out, issue press releases, and push out through the steering committee members for that community meeting. We've been working on preparing the boards and the outreach materials and the survey tool that Robert alluded to at the meeting last month that we're really hoping is going to go viral. So we'll introduce it at the meeting, and then at that point we hope that people will start to share it, and we'll get a lot of information from that meeting. But schedule has continued to be the same. We'll have it complete by mid-2018.
Okay, good.
Can you send me a copy when that meeting is, would you mind?
Sure.
Since we live close, and we'll probably try to come to that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Marshville US 74 corridor study.
Yeah,
Charles?
well, we met, found 3 different things that kind of stuck out to me. Excuse me. Evidently, this county has some of the last remnants of just a direct access to Highway 74. The state of North Carolina would like for Highway 74 to be a little bit more of a limited access road. And Bjorn, you were there. I was starting to doze off during part of it. But anyhow, so they would like to get that rectified, but in looking back over several years of traffic history, the amount of traffic going through Marshville hasn't changed a bit. The number of cars traveling through Marshville on US 74 just has remained stagnant. So I was surprised. They had at one time done a preliminary study to do a bypass of Marshville on 74, and it was surprising to me that they were going south of Marshville rather than going north. I don't know exactly why that surprised me, but it just
To avoid the railroad tracks.
railroad tracks. Okay, all right. And so, but that's a considerable amount of money and no extra automobiles, and it just depends on how bad they want to limit access on 74, I guess.
That's correct. That's a big goal of the NCDOT. Big picture, they want to see controlled access between Wilmington and Charlotte. You have Wadesboro, you have Marshville, and they have similar issues. Wadesboro is obviously bigger. Wadesboro has, through the Rocky River RPO, requested the Turnpike Authority to assess the Wadesboro bypass for much the same reasons that Marshville has requested this study to look at the bypass, which is that they fear the bypass is built and all their economic activity gets sucked out of the town. And so they felt that, well, if it's tolled, it may not generate that much revenue, but it will only put the traffic on there that really just needs to get through town. And so it will allow kind of a happy medium of, yes, the congestion is reduced, and the people that just want to get to the beach and don't want to stop through there will bypass it, but they'll still be able to benefit from some of the traffic volume of people going through and within the town. And that study is going to be, final results are going to be known in about the next month, and they could inform Marshville for the future if whether that's an option. It's actually a lot more feasible to be done in Marshville because you could directly transition from the Monroe Expressway directly to Wadesboro, or not Wadesboro, Marshville, around the town. So it's an interesting situation, and the study is interesting, like what Charles said about the fact that traffic hasn't changed. Yes, the county has grown by over 100% since 2002, but the traffic volume through that town hasn't changed a lick. So just because the county's growing or the region's growing doesn't mean that it's gonna spill over into Marshall, it could remain stagnant. And that's a very important consideration for how the town tries to get a project in the town itself, as opposed to just waiting on a bypass. And that's what we hope to bring out of this and get to the DOT's attention.
Good.
Next meeting's on March 2nd, I believe.
It is, it's in about 4 weeks.
I was awake for that.
Okay. CRTPO, Russell?
He covered a lot of the stuff I was gonna say, but either way, from 2018, 2025, in the three counties, which is Iredell, Mecklenburg, and Union, there's 142 projects approved for $3 billion. Between 2026, 2035, there's 34 projects approved for $2.8 billion. 2036, 2045, 33 projects for $2.8 billion, for a total of $8.6 billion. That sounds like a lot of money, but it really isn't when you look at all the stuff that's going on in our area. These meetings are fun. I enjoy it because you just don't realize how much stuff they are talking about. I mean, just to give you guys an idea, and I know he hit some of this, but that CSX line just in our counties, $12.3 million upgrade to our railroad track. That's pretty cool. You know, I mean, that's a pretty neat deal. And, you know, this Providence Road South project is $82.5 million. I mean, it's neat to think of the amount of money. Roosevelt Boulevard in Monroe is going to have an upgrade of $16.5 million between now and 2025. US 74 at Rocky River is going to have a $2.1 million fix on it. I mean, it's neat to watch and see what they're doing. But you know, what they brought up the other night, the reason this stuff takes so long is the environmental studies. To get stuff on the maps, people think we want a project done now because we want the project done. Time you get through environmental studies, all the stuff's got to get done. It takes a while to get these road projects approved. So, and I didn't, you know, it's stuff I didn't realize, but you know, I've been in the business, but it's really neat. If you guys ever get a chance to come up to these meetings, they're well worth it because it's really kind of cool, I think, to hear what's going on in the whole region. Because there's federal people that come and speak, there's state people that come and speak. You know, it's a lot of folks that come and tell us what they're doing, and you got people from every town, you know, everybody's there. You know, it's not. I mean, the mayor shows up of Charlotte. I mean, I will say, Vile Isles. Her politics and I's not the same, but she's active. She's working. She's involved, and I told Kathy I was very impressed to see these, who I would call the big shots, show up to these meetings because they take it. It's important. They know how important transportation is. You know how much important the roads are. You know, and this is the group that makes those decisions. I have no voting power. I just get to go and hear it. But you know, it is pretty neat. You know, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So, but and I wanted, while I've got the floor, I wanted to say every time I called for these guys, every time, and I do call because I'm in the business. They always help. They're always. I mean, I had a thing yesterday, and they answered my questions quickly, and we got in a way that I could explain it to the other person involved, and we kept ourselves out of I wasn't in the jam, but the other person was going to be in a jam because they wouldn't listen. Surveyor called, got confirmation of what I said, and immediately we are all on the same page. But these guys are always help, and I thank you for that. So.
Thank you, Russell, for those comments. Real quick, would like to, Lee, thank you for what you've done tonight. Bjorn, thank you. As always, Brian and Dick, appreciate all that y'all do. You've got an open ear to every time the phone rings, like what Russell said. I think this step up of Robert and Charles and Russell to these three planning things. Thanks, guys, for supporting them, being there to help. Somebody can't be here to make a report, whatever the case may be. But guys, appreciate y'all doing this because y'all got other things to do. besides just, work here, you got work at home, a home life, et cetera, so forth, so on. And then the other thing, all of y'all that are here tonight as board members, appreciate you being here so we can handle this meeting. Sorry we had, 2 people absent because of sickness and another one just couldn't make it. But, before we go to any closing comments, anything, Dick, from you or Brian? Okay, all right, good deal. Chris, anything? Or Lee?
Did you guys talk while I was gone about the school of government workshop?
No, we're not.
Okay, I got it right here.
Okay, great.
On May 1st, I'm not sure what day of the week that is, but May 1st from 1 to 4:30 in Charlotte, the School of Government from Chapel Hill is offering a workshop for planning board on legislative zoning decisions. That's what you guys are doing on these conditional rezoning applications. It's a $55 fee. I think we talked about if any of you guys wanted to go, I think we could probably do 3 of you.
We can cover up to 3.
Yeah.
And again, y'all can get in the mosh pit and fight it out if you want to, but, you know, we can cover up to 3.
Well, then Dick can pay for the others.
Yeah.
Everybody in favor, say aye.
That's right. So we would certainly be happy if any of you would like to go, if you're interested.
I'm gonna go, so I'm available to share a ride.
And that doesn't count in the 3.
Right, I
Any of the
don't
3
count.
I know she said share a
board-
ride, he didn't say drive, did he?
Any of 3 board members would.
Won't you
Just
send
let us
out
know.
send out a note to everybody on it,
Yep.
and then reply back. No, okay, good deal. Chris, any closing comments?
No, sir.
Everett?
No, sir.
Charles? Russell? Okay. Need a motion to adjourn?
And I'll second.
Y'all get that? 3, 4, and 2 to adjourn. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Safe travels. Oh, here.
Well, good to see you, sir.
Come on, man. Oh, stop.